Welcome back to HFY Soundscape, the best channel for HFY Sci-Fi tales. She closed her eyes before the rifle finished rising, and that single motion fractured everything Commander Rowan Hale believed about war. The alien woman lay pinned beneath the torn hull of a downed courier craft, its engines still ticking as if unsure the battle was over. Smoke drifted low across the salt flats of Virex Minor, turning the ruined skyline into silhouettes of broken spires and fallen banners. When Hale stepped closer, armor scarred and boots heavy with ash, she did not beg. She did not run. She simply accepted the end. That acceptance struck harder than any blast. Rowan stopped. The battlefield noise faded into a distant hush, as if the planet itself was holding its breath. He had marched through cities reduced to dust. He had followed orders that erased names and histories in a single command. But this was different. This was a life choosing stillness over fear. Slowly, deliberately, he lowered the rifle, because in HFY Sci-Fi tales, the smallest human choice can echo across stars. The woman's breathing was uneven, but steady. Her skin shimmered faintly, catching the light like polished stone. Hale recognized the species immediately. Aurelian, one of the architects of humanity's longest war. The ones blamed for orbital strikes and lost colonies. The ones every soldier was trained to hate without question. Rowan reached up and disengaged his helmet seals. Cold air rushed across his face, sharp with minerals and smoke. The comms chatter cut out. No orders. No shouting. Just him and her, and the silence between enemies. Hold on, before we get into the real stuff, I want to know, what are you doing at this exact moment while hearing my voice? Sitting alone? Working? Drifting somewhere between? I read every comment. The Aurelian's eyes fluttered open for a second. She saw his bare face. Human. Unmasked. Her pupils widened, then closed again, slower this time, as if the effort alone cost her something precious. Rowan felt a tightening in his chest he didn't recognize. He knelt. The tactical part of his mind screamed. This was foolish. Dangerous. Against protocol. But another voice, older and quieter, asked a different question. What happens if I don't? Rowan scanned the wreckage. No movement. No heat signatures besides the dying ship and her fading bio readings. He could leave. He could finish this. No one would question it. No one would even know. Instead, he reached for his medkit. The seal hissed open. The sound made her flinch. Her hand twitched toward a shard of metal nearby, then stopped. She was too weak to lift it. Rowan saw the calculation in that brief motion. Survival versus pain. Hope versus certainty. Easy, he said, the word leaving his mouth before he realized he'd chosen to speak. Her translator implant crackled to life. Human, she whispered, voice thin but clear. Do it quickly. That was when Rowan understood the true cost of this war. Not the ships, not the planets, the certainty. Entire species had been taught that mercy no longer existed. He applied a stabilizer patch to her side. The device glowed soft blue as it bonded. Her breath hitched, then steadied. Color returned, faint but real. The impossible had just happened. A human had helped an Aurelian on an open battlefield. Somewhere above them, a carrier burned as it fell from orbit. The sky flashed white, then dimmed again. Rowan didn't look up. His focus stayed on her, because he could feel it now. The shift. The moment history would later point to and argue over. Analysts would debate strategies and treaties. Politicians would claim foresight, but none of them would mention the dust or the silence, or the way an enemy closed her eyes and trusted a monster not to be won. Rowan Hale stood and offered his hand. Around them, distant thunder rolled as secondary explosions rippled through the valley. Rowan's internal timer warned of incoming patrols, human and otherwise. Command would demand reports, explanations, proof, none of which he had, only a decision already made. He imagined the headlines that would never be written, the courts that would never convene, the quiet consequences that would follow him forever. In HFY Sci-Fi tales, humanity is not defined by its weapons, but by the moments no one orders and no one witnesses. This was one of those moments, fragile and irreversible, balanced on a single outstretched hand. Now, The patrol arrived sooner than Rowan expected, and that was the problem. In HFY Sci-Fi tales, timing is never neutral, it chooses sides. The ground trembled as armored transports skimmed low across the flats, searchlights cutting through smoke like blades. Rowan's hand remained extended, suspended between decision and consequence. The Aurelian opened her eyes again. This time, she did not close them. Her gaze locked onto his face, studying him with a clarity that surprised him. Pain etched her features, but fear had shifted into something sharper. Assessment. Intelligence. She saw the patrol lights reflecting off his armor. She understood what his presence here meant, for both of them. If they see you with me, she said quietly, they will end you. Rowan didn't deny it. He tightened his grip on the medkit strap instead. If they see you alive, he replied, they'll end you first. The transports veered closer. Rowan cursed under his breath. He activated his suit's external cam and swept the area once more. No cover, no concealment. The wrecked courier ship was half buried, its hull split like a ribcage. That was all they had. The next 10 seconds would decide who survived and who history would erase. Rowan made the choice before fear could argue. He disengaged the emergency beacon on his armor and crushed it under his boot. The signal winked out. Any friendly units tracking him just lost their guide. That alone was treason. Can you move? He asked. The Aurelian tested her limbs. Her jaw tightened. With assistance. Briefly. That was enough. Rowan slid an arm under her shoulders, careful of the stabilizer patch. She was lighter than he expected. Fragile. Not the towering enemy figures from propaganda feeds. Just someone. They staggered toward the wreckage as the first transport passed overhead, engines roaring loud enough to shake bone. They ducked beneath the fractured hull. Rowan pulled loose cables and panels down around them, creating a crude thermal screen. His suit dampened their heat signatures, but it wouldn't last. He slowed his breathing. Forced stillness. Outside, boots hit the ground. Scans show residual movement. A voice barked. Human. Sharp. Close. Rowan felt the Aurelian tense. Her fingers curled against his sleeve. Not pleading. Anchoring. HFY Sci-Fi tales often talk about bravery in battle. This was something else. This was choosing vulnerability while the enemy stood 3 meters away. The patrol moved past them. One soldier paused. Rowan's muscles screamed to strike, to act, to do something. Instead, he stayed frozen. A second passed. Then another. Finally, the boots moved on. When the transports lifted away, Rowan exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours. That was unwise, the Aurelian murmured. Most important things are, Rowan replied. She studied him again. Why? The question carried weight. Not accusation. Not gratitude. Curiosity. Rowan had no clean answer. He searched for one anyway. Because if this war ends the way it started, he said slowly, then nothing changes. We just trade ruins. Her expression shifted. Something ancient stirred behind her eyes. You speak like a philosopher, but you wear a soldier's scars. Rowan almost laughed. Almost. They couldn't stay. Patrols would return. Sensors would recalibrate. Rowan accessed his suit's map and plotted a route through a collapsed industrial sector nearby. Old tunnels. Abandoned. Dangerous. Perfect. As they moved, the sky darkened. Ash fell like snow. Every step jarred her injury. Rowan adjusted, slowing his pace, shielding her with his body when debris shifted. He realized he was no longer thinking in terms of objectives or extraction points. Only distance. Only time. They reached the tunnel entrance, just as orbital debris streaked overhead, burning bright against the clouds. The war was still raging. Fleets still clashed beyond sight. But here, beneath broken stone, something quieter was unfolding. Inside the tunnel, bioluminescent growths cast faint light along the walls. The Aurelian paused, breathing hard. Rowan knelt again, checking the stabilizer. It was holding, but barely. You cannot bring me to your people, she said. They will not listen. Then I won't, Rowan answered. That stopped her. What? There's a neutral outpost 2 clicks east. Independent traders. Med facilities. Off the grid. Her eyes widened. You would abandon your command? Rowan met her gaze, without flinching. I already did. Silence stretched between them, thick and electric. In that moment, Rowan understood the true scale of his choice. Not just rescue. Defection. Not just mercy. Rewriting allegiance. Above them, the war roared on, unaware it had already begun to lose something far more dangerous than territory. Because one human had decided the enemy was no longer an abstract idea, but a person worth saving, and the galaxy was not ready for what that would unleash next. The tunnel didn't feel abandoned. It felt forgotten, and there is a difference. Forgotten places still remember themselves. The air was warmer inside, humming faintly through ancient conduits embedded in the rock. Rowan guided the Aurelian forward, each step echoing too loudly for comfort. Forgotten corridors have a way of revealing truths no battlefield ever will. Her breathing grew labored. Rowan stopped again, bracing her against the wall. Bioluminescent veins pulsed softly along the stone, illuminating her face in shifting hues. Up close, he could see how wrong the war briefings had been. No monstrous features, no alien cruelty etched into bone. Just exhaustion, pain, and a quiet endurance that felt uncomfortably familiar. My name is Saris, she said suddenly. Rowan blinked. You don't have to. I choose to, she replied. Names matter when survival is uncertain. He nodded once. Rowan. The word lingered between them. Names had power. In HFY Sci-Fi tales, that power often comes at a cost. Saris tested her weight again, then pulled free slightly, standing on her own for a moment. Pride, or necessity. Rowan couldn't tell which. If you take me to this outpost, she said, they will ask questions. They'll get lies, Rowan answered. That is not reassuring. It's realistic. They moved deeper. The tunnel forked, signage long corroded. Rowan followed instinct and partial maps, trusting outdated data more than the open sky. Every few minutes, distant tremors shook dust from the ceiling. The war above was escalating. He could feel it in his bones. Sarah stumbled. Rowan caught her before she fell. This time, she didn't pull away. You are risking more than your life, she said quietly. You are risking meaning. Your people will call this betrayal. Rowan tightened his grip. They taught me humanity was worth defending. That is not what they mean by it, Sarah said. No, Rowan replied. It's what I mean. They reached a chamber where the tunnel widened into a circular hub. Old machines sat dormant, coated in mineral growth. Rowan froze. Movement flickered at the edge of his sensors. Not human. Not Aurelian. Something else stepped into the light. A scavenger drone, jury-rigged and armed, optics glowing amber. Neutral territory or not, desperation had drawn predators here. The drone's weapons charged with a rising whine. Rowan shifted Saris behind him. Stay back. She did not argue. Instead, she placed a hand on his arm. It is damaged, she whispered. But desperate things are the most dangerous. The drone advanced. Rowan raised his rifle, but hesitated. The noise would echo. Draw attention. He needed a quieter solution. HFY Sci-Fi tales often celebrate firepower. This moment demanded restraint. He lunged instead. The drone fired. The shot grazed a shoulder, armor flaring as it absorbed the impact. Rowan crashed into the machine, slamming it into the wall. Metal shrieked. Sparks flew. He ripped at exposed wiring, ignoring the pain screaming through his arm. Saris acted. She seized a fallen shard of crystal-like stone and drove it into the drone's optic cluster. The machine spasmed, then went still, collapsing in a heap of smoke and broken parts. Silence returned. Rowan stared at her. She met his gaze, breath ragged. You are not the only one capable of mercy, she said. Nor violence. Rowan laughed once, sharp and breathless. Fair. He patched his shoulder quickly. The injury wasn't fatal, but it slowed him. Everything slowed him now. Time. Options. Hope. They resumed, both aware that the encounter had cost them more than energy. It had cost concealment. Signals would ripple outward. Someone, or something, would notice. As they neared the tunnel exit, Rowan's suit chimed softly. An encrypted channel forced its way through his disabled comms. Command override. He stopped. Saris felt it immediately. They have found you. Rowan closed his eyes for a brief second, then opened them. A familiar face filled his visor display. Captain Marek Voss, his commanding officer. Hail, Voss said coldly. You are off-grid. You are unresponsive. And you are flagged as aiding an enemy asset. Explain. Rowan looked at Saris, then back at the screen. No, Rowan said. I won't. Voss's eyes hardened. That is not a request. I know, Rowan replied. The channel cut. A final data packet followed. Coordinates. Intercept vectors. Orders had already been issued. They were coming. Saris straightened despite the pain. You must leave me. Rowan shook his head. Not happening. You do not understand, she insisted. If they capture us together, this becomes propaganda. Martyrdom. Another justification. Rowan considered her words. Then he did something that shocked even himself. He deactivated his rank insignia. I understand perfectly, he said. That's why we keep moving. Ahead, faint artificial light spilled from the tunnel's end. The neutral outpost. Salvation, or another trap. Behind them, boots and engines began to echo through forgotten stone. The tunnel had made its choice. Now the galaxy would have to make its own. The light at the tunnel's end flickered, and for a moment Rowan couldn't tell if it meant safety or surveillance. In HFY Sci-Fi tales, neutrality is rarely neutral. It is simply a pause between storms. They emerged into a ravine carved deep into the planet's crust. Rusted platforms clung to the rock walls, connected by cables and narrow walkways. The neutral outpost, Kestrel Reach, hung suspended like a spider in its web. Dim lights glowed behind armored glass. Life, trade, secrets. Some sanctuaries protect you, others sell you. Rowan slowed as they approached the perimeter scanners. Saris leaned heavier against him now. Her strength was failing. He could feel it in the way her steps dragged, the way her breathing grew shallow again. A drone descended, its hull marked with neutral insignia. Identify, it demanded, voice flat and artificial. Rowan stepped forward. Independent contractor. Medical emergency. The drone's optics swept over Saris. Paused. Swept again. Species flagged, it said. Clarify status. Rowan felt his pulse spike. Civilian. The drone processed. Seconds stretched. Somewhere behind them, distant engines roared. Pursuit closing fast. Docking clearance provisional. The drone finally said. Weapons sealed. Violations will be met with force. Rowan didn't argue. He deactivated his rifle and handed it over. Saris watched the exchange, her expression unreadable. Inside, Kestrel Reach smelled of oil, ozone, and old compromises. Merchants froze mid-conversation as they passed. Eyes followed. Whispers started. An Aurelian in human arms was not subtle. They reached the med bay. A woman with cybernetic eyes looked up, already scanning. You're bleeding, she said to Rowan. Later, Rowan replied. She needs help. Now. The medic hesitated, just a fraction too long. Then she nodded and motioned them inside. Saris was transferred to a table, machines whirring to life around her. Rowan stepped back, suddenly unsure where to put his hands, his weight, himself. Minutes passed. Or hours. Time blurred again. The medic finally turned to him. She'll live, she said. Barely. Her physiology's complex. Treatment like this, it won't go unnoticed. Rowan exhaled. Relief hit him, so hard his knees almost buckled. That's fine, he said. I won't be here long. But fate had other plans. An alarm blared. Security breach, the station AI announced. Multiple armed vessels approaching. Human military signatures confirmed. The room went cold. Saris opened her eyes. Her voice was weak, but steady. They followed you. Rowan nodded. I hoped they wouldn't. The medic backed away. You need to leave. Both of you. Rowan looked at Saris. She tried to sit up, and failed. I can't outrun a fleet, Rowan said quietly. Saris met his gaze. Then stopped running. She gestured weakly toward a console. Kestrel Reach broadcasts on open channels. Traitors, smugglers, observers. Let them see. Rowan frowned. See what? The truth, she said. A human choosing mercy. An Aurelian choosing trust. HFY Sci-Fi tales often hinge on a single broadcast, the moment the universe stops pretending it didn't know. Rowan hesitated. Then he moved. He accessed the outpost's relay. The feed went live across dozens of frequencies. Faces appeared on screens. Curious, suspicious, hungry for spectacle. Rowan stood beside Ceres's med table. He removed the last of his armor. "My name is Rowan Hale," he said. "Former commander in the Terran Vanguard. I disobeyed orders to save a life." Gasps. Murmurs. Ceres spoke next, her translator carrying her voice farther than any weapon. "I am Ceres of the Aurelian Accord. I was taught humans show no mercy. I was wrong." Outside, the first human ships locked into firing positions. Rowan's heart pounded. There was no undoing this now. "Call them off," Ceres whispered, "or make them show who they are." Rowan looked into the camera, into millions of watching eyes. "I won't fight you," he said, "but I won't step aside either." Silence followed. Then a new signal cut through the chaos. Not human, not Aurelian, unknown. The galaxy was listening, and someone else had decided to answer. The unknown signal didn't speak at first. It watched. Across Kestrel Reach, screens flickered as the feed stabilized, pulling in observers from systems far beyond the war zone. Traders paused mid-deal. Mercenaries lowered weapons. Even the human fleet outside hesitated, targeting systems momentarily unsure what they were allowed to destroy. When silence arrives at the wrong moment, it becomes louder than any weapon. Rowan felt it in his chest. This wasn't interference. It was intention. The signal finally resolved into a symbol. Ancient, geometric, and unmistakably neutral. The Covenant of Orbits. A coalition older than the current war. Sworn to non-alignment, rarely seen and never ignored. They were observers, judges, and they had just tuned in. Ceres exhaled slowly. "They don't intervene," she murmured. "They record." "Good," Rowan said. "Then let them record this." Outside, Captain Voss's voice cut across open comms, sharp and controlled. "Commander Hale, stand down. You are endangering a strategic operation." Rowan didn't look away from the camera. "I'm ending one." Voss's image appeared beside the Covenant symbol, jaw tight. "This is a staged manipulation," he said. "The Aurelian is using you." Ceres turned her head toward the camera, pain etched deep, but eyes clear. "If I wished you harm," she said calmly, "I would have let him kill me. It would have been easier." That line rippled through the feeds. HFY Sci-Fi tales often turn on a reversal, not of power, but of perception. Rowan stepped closer to Ceres. "You taught us this war was necessary," he said, voice steady. "That they weren't like us. That mercy was weakness." He paused. "Let the silence work. What if you were wrong?" The human fleet held position. Weapons hot. Orders queued. Waiting. The Covenant symbol pulsed once. Data streams flowed. Evidence compiled. Battlefield logs. Medical scans. Unedited footage. Truth, unfiltered and inconvenient. Voss's voice wavered, just slightly. "Hale, this ends now." Rowan shook his head. "No. This begins now." Suddenly, alarms blared again, but this time, not from Kestrel Reach. Aurelian ships dropped from slipspace at the edge of the system. Not attack formations. Defensive arcs. They positioned themselves between the human fleet and the outpost. Ceres closed her eyes, not in surrender, but in relief. "They came," she whispered. The standoff froze the stars themselves. One wrong move would ignite everything. One shot would erase any chance left. The Covenant transmitted a single message, echoed across every channel. Hostilities suspended pending review. Suspended. Not ended. But enough. Rowan felt the weight of the moment settle on him. He was no longer a soldier following orders. He was evidence. Voss stared at the display, realization dawning too late. "You've made yourself a symbol," he said quietly. Rowan met his gaze. "So did you." The feed cut. The human fleet powered down weapons. The Aurelian ships mirrored the action. Across the galaxy, reactions ignited. Protests, debates, fear, hope, all of it sparked by a single moment of refusal. Ceres reached for Rowan's hand. He took it without hesitation. "This will cost you everything," she said. Rowan squeezed her fingers. "Then it better be worth it." Outside the viewport, stars burned steady and indifferent. But something had shifted. Not peace. Not yet. But possibility. And in HFY Sci-Fi tales, possibility is the most dangerous force of all. The Covenant symbol pulsed again, this time, accompanied by coordinates and a summons. A hearing. A judgment. The galaxy would decide what this act of humanity truly meant. The hearing was not held in a room, nor on a world. It unfolded in orbit above a dead star, lightless, ancient, and chosen precisely because nothing there could claim ownership. In HFY Sci-Fi tales, the most important decisions are often made where no one feels at home. Rowan stood on a circular platform of transparent alloy. Ceres rested beside him, supported by a medical harness, her strength slowly returning. Around them, holographic apertures opened one by one, each representing a power that had survived long enough to matter. When the galaxy watches, every word becomes irreversible. The Covenant of Orbits appeared last, not as a face, but as a shifting lattice of light, impossible to focus on for long. Their voice arrived everywhere at once. "Commander Rowan Hale," it said, "you are charged with dereliction, interference, and destabilization." Rowan didn't flinch. "I accept." Murmurs rippled through the observers. And Ceres of the Aurelian Accord. The Covenant continued. "You are charged with unauthorized contact and breach of wartime doctrine." Ceres inclined her head. "I accept." The lattice pulsed. "You may speak." Rowan inhaled slowly. He had no prepared statement. No rhetoric. Just truth. "I was trained to see enemies," he said. "To reduce entire civilizations to threat profiles. On Virex Minor, I met a person instead." He gestured toward Ceres. "I didn't end a war. I didn't save a galaxy. I just refused to become less than what my species claims to be." HFY Sci-Fi tales don't glorify perfection, they glorify choice. Ceres spoke next. "Our war has lasted generations because it feeds on certainty. The certainty that the other side cannot change. That mercy is a trick, a weakness. I was certain, too, until a human proved me wrong." A human delegate interrupted, voice sharp. "This is sentiment, not policy." The Covenant responded instantly. "Policy is shaped by precedent." Silence fell. Evidence streamed across the void. Casualty curves, resource depletion, cultural erosion on both sides. The cost of certainty laid bare. Then something unexpected happened. A junior human officer stepped forward on the feed. Then another. Then an Aurelian civilian representative. Stories poured in. Small acts. Unreported ceasefires. Shared aid. Moments buried under command silence. Rowan's chest tightened. He hadn't been alone. He'd just been visible. The Covenant's lattice shifted, brighter now. "The war continues not because it must," it said, "but because it is familiar." That statement struck harder than any verdict. "Therefore," the Covenant continued, "we issue a binding intervention, a corridor of ceasefire, joint humanitarian oversight. Violations will be met with collective response." Outrage erupted. Relief followed. Arguments sparked instantly. Rowan felt Ceres's hand tighten around his. "This will fail," a voice snapped. "They'll break it." "Perhaps," the Covenant replied, "but failure is not justification for an action." The hearing concluded as abruptly as it began. The observers vanished. The dead star loomed, silent witness to a fragile beginning. Rowan and Ceres were left alone on the platform. "What happens to us?" Rowan asked quietly. Ceres smiled faintly. "We live with what we started." A transport arrived, neutral, unmarked. Exile, not prison. Freedom, but not forgiveness. As they departed, Rowan looked back at the empty space where the Covenant had been. He felt no triumph, only responsibility. Because HFY Sci-Fi tales are not about humans winning wars. They are about humans daring to end them. But endings are messy, and beginnings are worse. As the transport slipped into jump space, Rowan's console lit up with a single message. Origin unknown. Symbols inspire imitators. Prepare for consequences. Rowan closed his eyes, not in fear, but resolve. Whatever came next, the galaxy had learned something dangerous. Humans could choose differently. Consequences arrived faster than hope ever does. In HFY Sci-Fi tales, the universe rarely waits for anyone to catch their breath. The transport emerged from jump space near a fringe system barely marked on most charts. A temporary haven arranged by the Covenant, quiet, remote, and deliberately insignificant. The kind of place history forgets unless something goes wrong. Peace creates a vacuum, and vacuums attract predators. Rowan sensed it before the alarms sounded. The stars outside warped unnaturally, not from jump signatures, but from interference. Someone was bending space nearby. Illegally. Aggressively. Saris looked up from her med readout. That isn't human. No, Rowan agreed. And it isn't Aurelian. The transport shuddered. Systems flickered. A warning tone screamed through the cabin as gravity fluctuated. Then a ship appeared. It was vast, asymmetrical, and bristling with technology neither of them recognized. Its hull bore no insignia. Only deep grooves etched with symbols that seemed to shift when viewed directly. A voice cut through every channel, bypassing security as if it weren't there. Human Rowan Hale. It said, Aurelian Saris, you have disrupted equilibrium. The ship blocked them in a tractor field. Saris stiffened. The null ascendancy. Rowan frowned. I've never heard of them. They prefer it that way, she replied. The voice returned, colder now. Your actions threaten profitable continuity. War stabilizes markets. Fear stabilizes control. Rowan felt anger flare. So that's it. You profit from endless bloodshed. Profit, the voice corrected, is order. HFY Sci-Fi tales often reveal the true enemy not as hatred, but indifference. The Ascendancy issued an ultimatum. Publicly recant. Discredit the ceasefire. Restore the narrative of inevitability. Or disappear. Rowan didn't hesitate. No. The tractor field tightened. Hull plates groaned. Saris grabbed his arm. They will erase us. Rowan met her gaze. Then we make it loud. He accessed the transport's emergency beacon and overrode every limiter. The signal burst outward, raw and unfiltered, carrying everything. The hearing, the threats, the Ascendancy's own words. Stop, the voice commanded, suddenly sharp. Too late. Across the system, receivers lit up. Traders, patrols, civilians. Proof spread faster than suppression ever could. The Ascendancy fired. The impact threw Rowan against the console. Pain exploded across his ribs. The transport spun, systems failing. Saris cried out as restraint strained. Through the chaos, Rowan forced the engines into overload. Not to escape. To jump blind. Space folded violently. The Ascendancy's ship vanished as the transport tore itself free, vanishing into unstable corridors no navigation system would willingly chart. Silence followed. Darkness. Rowan woke to alarms and flickering lights. The ship was drifting, half dead. Outside, a planet loomed lush, green, untouched. Saris stirred beside him. Where are we? Rowan checked the readings and laughed weakly. Nowhere important. She smiled. Then nowhere safe. As they descended through the atmosphere, Rowan understood the truth. They had crossed another line. Not just mercy, not just defiance. They had exposed a system built on endless war. And systems do not forgive that. On the planet below, fires burned in distant cities, human and alien alike, sparked by revelations spreading too fast to contain. The galaxy was waking up, and not everyone would like what they saw. The planet had no name, only a designation buried in forgotten survey logs. Dense forests covered most of its surface, broken by scattered settlements that predated the war by centuries. People came here to disappear, which meant others came here to hunt. Hiding from history only works until history comes looking for you. Rowan and Saris watched the settlement from a ridgeline at dusk. Fires burned low. Not panic fires, controlled, defensive, the kind lit by people who expected trouble. They know, Saris said quietly. About us. About the broadcast. Rowan nodded. News travels faster when it scares the right people. They descended cautiously. No armor. No insignia. Just two figures carrying the weight of too many decisions. At the settlement's edge, armed sentries stepped out, weapons raised but steady. A woman with graying hair and a scarred cheek studied them. "You're the reason half the sector can't sleep," she said. Not a question. Rowan raised his hands. "We didn't come to start anything." She snorted. "That's what everyone says." Saris stepped forward. "We came because running ends eventually." The woman's eyes narrowed, then flicked to Saris's Aurelian features. Murmurs rippled through the guards. "You've got nerve," the woman said. "I'm Mara. This place survives by staying irrelevant. You've made that impossible." Rowan met her gaze. "Then let us help you survive what comes next." Mara studied them for a long moment. Then she gestured toward the gates. One chance. No symbols. No speeches. Inside, the settlement buzzed with tension. Screens showed fragmented feeds, uprisings, walkouts, ceasefire violations, citizens demanding answers. The galaxy was fracturing along fault lines that had always been there. HFY Sci-Fi tales rarely show change as clean. It's chaotic, loud, uncomfortable. Saris moved among the people, speaking quietly, listening more than talking. Rowan noticed how many watched her, not with hatred, but confusion. That confusion mattered. Hours later, Mara returned with grim news. Scouts spotted ascendancy probes. They're sweeping fringe worlds. You're a liability. Rowan didn't argue. Tell us where. Saris turned sharply. Rowan. If they're hunting symbols, Rowan said, then symbols need stand. They left before dawn. At the edge of the settlement, Rowan activated a beacon. Not a call for rescue, but a challenge. Open. Traceable. Saris looked at him. You know this ends with confrontation. Yes, Rowan replied. That's the point. The ascendancy arrived with overwhelming force. Ships slid from distorted space, like predators emerging from deep water. But they didn't arrive alone. Human defectors, Aurelian escorts, neutral militias, even Covenant observers hung at a distance, recording everything. The galaxy had followed the signal. The ascendancy's voice boomed across space. You persist in destabilization. Rowan stepped into the open channel. No, we're stabilizing something you broke. Saris joined him. This ends now. Weapons charged. Fleets aligned. Every trigger finger trembled. Then something extraordinary happened. The ascendancy's own subordinates hesitated. Data leaked. Internal fractures exposed. Profit graphs clashed with public outrage. Order began to fail. In HFY Sci-Fi tales, the final battle is not always fought with weapons, but with visibility. The first ascendancy ship powered down. Then another. Silence spread, heavy and disbelieving. Rowan exhaled slowly. It's over, he whispered. Saris shook her head gently. No, it's changed. Above them, stars burned indifferent, but the lines between them had shifted forever, and the galaxy would never again be able to pretend it didn't know. The silence after the ascendancy's collapse was not peace. It was shock. Entire fleets hung motionless, systems idling, commanders unsure who they were allowed to obey anymore. When power structures fall, confusion rushes in to fill the gap. The most dangerous moment isn't the battle. It's what comes after everyone stops firing. Rowan stood on the planet's surface, staring up at ships that no longer pointed their weapons at anything. Around him, people slowly emerged from shelters. Humans, Aurelians, others whose names history rarely bothered to record. No cheering, no celebration, just cautious breaths. Saris leaned against a stone outcrop, exhaustion finally catching her. They didn't surrender, she said. They fractured. Rowan nodded, which means someone will try to rebuild them. As if summoned by the thought, a new transmission cut through the static. Not the ascendancy. Not the Covenant. A coalition emergency channel, raw, overlapping voices arguing in real time. Power vacuums don't stay empty. Mara's face appeared on Rowan's wrist display. You two just turned every backroom deal into open fire, she said. Some people are grateful. Others want your heads. Rowan almost smiled. Fair. Get ready. Mara continued. This isn't ending clean. Hours later, delegations began to arrive on the planet. Not fleets, envoys. Representatives without uniforms. People who knew the old rules no longer protected them. Rowan and Saris were asked to speak again. Not as symbols this time, but as witnesses. They stood before a makeshift assembly beneath an open sky. No banners. No scripted speeches. Just truth, exposed and uncomfortable. A human industrial delegate spoke first. If wars end, entire economies collapse. Saris replied calmly. If wars continue, entire species collapse. An Aurelian strategist followed. Trust cannot be rebuilt overnight. Rowan answered. Neither was hatred. Someone built that too. The arguments stretched long into the night. Voices rose. Accusations flew. More than once, Rowan thought it might all fall apart right there. Then a young voice cut through the noise. A human civilian. No rank. No title. My brother died on Virex Minor, she said. I was told it was necessary. I just watched footage where it wasn't. Silence followed. Real silence. The kind that changes rooms. One by one, others spoke. Losses. Regrets. Questions that had been buried for years, because asking them was dangerous. Rowan felt something shift. Not above them in the stars, but among the people standing on the ground. Later, as dawn crept over the forests, Saris joined Rowan at the edge of the clearing. You look surprised, she said softly. I thought it would be louder, Rowan admitted. She nodded. Reckonings usually aren't. A Covenant observer approached, not projecting, not recording, just present. The corridor of ceasefire is holding, it said. Barely, but it holds. Rowan exhaled. That's enough for now. The observer studied them. History will argue about your actions. Saris tilted her head. History always does. As the observer departed, Rowan felt the weight settle in again, not crushing, but permanent. There would be trials, repercussions, attempts to erase or distort what happened. Some already were. He turned to Saris. If we stop now, walk away. She met his gaze. Then someone else will decide what this meant. Rowan looked out at the waking planet, at ships slowly dispersing, at people who no longer looked at each other only as enemies. Then we don't stop, he said. Saris smiled, not wide, not triumphant, just real. Good. Because the hardest part was never the rescue, or the broadcast, or standing down fleets. The hardest part was staying human after the galaxy started paying attention, and that test was only beginning. Years later, historians would argue about where the war truly ended. Some would point to treaties, others to economic collapse or political exhaustion, but none of them would agree, and that was fitting. Endings like this are never clean. The moment that changed everything didn't look heroic when it happened. It looked quiet. Rowan Hale stood on a balcony overlooking a rebuilt transit hub on Virex Minor. The salt flats were gone now, replaced by modular cities and shared corridors where species passed one another without flinching. Not without tension, not without scars, but without automatic hatred. Below, a human child chased an Aurelian one, laughter echoing off steel and glass. Rowan watched until the sound faded into the city's rhythm. Saris joined him, walking without assistance now. Time had left lines on both of them. Not damage. Evidence. They're naming this place after you? She said. Rowan grimaced. I asked them not to. She smiled slightly. They did it anyway. They stood in silence for a while. Ships came and went. Trade flowed. Not perfect. Never perfect. But alive. You could have disappeared, Saris said. After everything. So could you, Rowan replied. She nodded. We stayed for the same reason. Below them, a small memorial stood simple. No flags. No rankings. Just names. Human. Aurelian. Others. Equal in death, at least. Rowan's console chimed softly. A message from an unfamiliar source. Do you regret it? He didn't hesitate. No. Saris watched his expression. Who was that? Someone hoping I'd say yes. She considered that, then looked back out at the city. The galaxy didn't change because you saved me, she said. It changed because you refused to look away. Rowan thought back to the battlefield. The dust, the silence, the moment an enemy closed her eyes and trusted him not to be what she feared. It wasn't bravery, he said quietly. It was choice. Saris reached for his hand. He took it, just as he had years ago, when the future was nothing but smoke and risk. Below them, life continued. Arguments, cooperation, mistakes, progress, all of it messy, all of it human. Rowan turned toward the viewer now, not as a soldier, not as a symbol, but as a reminder. If one decision can fracture a war, if one act of mercy can expose a lie big enough to span stars, then the question was never whether humanity was capable of change. The question was always whether it would choose to. If this story moved you, take a moment to support the channel. Like the video, share it with someone who loves powerful sci-fi stories, and subscribe to HFY Scape for more unforgettable journeys across the stars. Because sometimes, the most powerful weapon a human has is knowing when not to use one.